Hollywood has always been a place where progressive ideals and political correctness dominate. But the war between the entertainment industry's biggest stars and Donald Trump has gone beyond simple ideological differences. Now it's personal. From the moment Trump launched his political career, Hollywood's actors, directors, and major studios have waged an all-out campaign against him. His name has been erased from scripts. Actors and musicians have refused to work with those who support him, and it seemed as if an entire industry united to erase him from cultural relevance. But behind the public statements and boycotts, a much deeper conflict is unfolding. Trump, with his vast influence and powerful connections, did not back down. Instead, he launched a counteroffensive, building his own circle of media and entertainment allies. How did Hollywood try to destroy Trump? Why has the fight for influence in the entertainment industry become so personal? And who is truly winning this battle? The battle between Donald Trump and Hollywood is no longer just about politics. It has become a full-scale cultural war. What began as outspoken celebrities making anti-Trump statements has evolved into a systematic effort to erase his influence from entertainment, media, and pop culture. The early attacks. Hollywood takes a stand. The moment Trump announced his candidacy in 2015, the entertainment industry turned against him with an intensity rarely seen in American politics. Late-night talk shows made him the primary target, turning their monologues into nightly attacks. Comedians dedicated entire stand-up specials to ridiculing him. Oscar speeches transformed into political rallies, where A-list celebrities denounced Trump in front of millions. But didn't stop at words. Actors and directors began blacklisting anyone in the industry who openly supported Trump. Those who donated to his campaign or expressed conservative views found themselves losing roles, getting the project shut down, or being quietly pushed out of Hollywood's elite circles. Major film studios and streaming platforms started rejecting projects tied to Trump or his supporters. Scripts that even referenced him in a neutral or positive light were rewritten or scrapped entirely. Musicians aligned with Trump saw their music pulled from playlists and events. Several high-profile artists refused to perform at his inauguration, and others pressured venues to cancel appearances by pro-Trump entertainers. Hollywood wasn't just opposing Trump, it was actively working to erase him from popular culture. The media machine joins the battle. Hollywood's influence wasn't limited to movies and music. Major news networks, social media platforms, and entertainment magazines joined the fight, ensuring that Trump's image was constantly portrayed in the most negative light possible. CNN, MSNBC, and major late-night hosts aligned their messaging, ensuring that anti-Trump narratives dominated the airwaves. Netflix, Amazon, and HBO began producing films and documentaries attacking Trump's policies and personal life, further shaping public perception. Social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram restricted pro-Trump content, with reports of shadow bans, algorithm manipulation, and outright suspensions of conservative voices. It was no longer just about Trump's policies. Hollywood was rewriting history in real time, ensuring that future generations would view him as a villain. The conservative resistance. Trump fights back. Trump, however, was never one to back down. As Hollywood ramped up its attacks, he began building his own media empire to counter their influence. Trump's allies in media launched alternative platforms, such as Truth Social, Rumble, and independent conservative news networks, ensuring that his voice remained heard despite mainstream censorship. He cultivated relationships with Hollywood outsiders, independent filmmakers, and conservative celebrities who refused to bow to the industry's progressive agenda. His influence over grassroots entertainment grew as right-leaning comedians, musicians, and content creators gained massive followings by openly defying Hollywood's political messaging. While Hollywood sought to erase him, Trump was creating a parallel entertainment industry, one that could challenge the traditional power structure. But the war was far from over. If Hollywood had succeeded in blacklisting Trump's influence from traditional media, would his counterattack be strong enough to reshape pop culture? Or would the entertainment industry's control over narratives prove too powerful to break? The battle had entered its most critical phase. The battle between Trump and Hollywood had already reshaped the entertainment industry, but was about to intensify even further as Hollywood doubled down on its efforts to erase him from cultural influence. Trump's counteroffensive began gaining traction in ways no one expected. This wasn't just about movies, music, or late-night comedy anymore. This was a fight for control over narratives, public perception, and ultimately, the future of America's cultural identity. Hollywood tightens its grip. Despite Trump's growing influence in alternative media, Hollywood wasn't about to let go of its dominance without a fight. The industry became more aggressive, expanding its blacklist, pushing more extreme messaging, and even rewriting history to maintain control over how Trump was remembered. Major studios enforced an unofficial but undeniable policy. Any actor, director, or writer who publicly supported Trump found their career in jeopardy. Even those who simply refused to denounce him faced backlash. Films and TV series actively rewrote history, portraying Trump in exaggerated, villainous ways. Some shows even reimagined real-life events, distorting facts to fit a narrative that ensured future generations would only see one version of Trump's presidency. Award shows turned into political stages, with winners using their speeches to attack Trump and his supporters. This wasn't just about expressing opinions anymore. It was an industry-wide message that dissenting views were unwelcome in entertainment. Hollywood wasn't just reacting to Trump. It was waging an all-out propaganda war to shape how history would remember him. The censorship expands. Beyond the movies and TV shows, tech giants and media corporations joined Hollywood in suppressing Trump's voice. Streaming platforms quietly removed older shows and movies that featured Trump in any neutral or positive light. His cameos in films and TV series disappeared from reruns, creating a digital erasure of his pop culture presence. Social media cracked down harder than ever, banning not just Trump but also influencers, comedians, and independent creators who supported him. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube deleted pro-Trump content under vague terms like misinformation or community guideline violations. Media coverage became more aggressive, ensuring that any news related to Trump was framed negatively, regardless of the actual facts. Even conservative-leaning entertainment figures who refused to condemn Trump found themselves targeted, ridiculed, and pushed out of Hollywood circles. It wasn't enough to defeat Trump politically. Hollywood and big tech were working together to ensure he had no cultural influence left. Trump's unexpected counterattack. But if Hollywood thought Trump was finished, they underestimated his ability to adapt. Instead of fighting Hollywood on its terms, Trump built his own media empire, giving rise to an alternative entertainment industry. New platforms like Truth Social, Rumble, and conservative streaming services became safe havens for pro-Trump creators, allowing them to bypass Hollywood's censorship. Independent filmmakers and comedians, tired of industry blacklisting, began producing content outside the traditional studio system. Right-leaning films and shows, which Hollywood refused to fund, started finding success through crowdfunding and alternative distribution channels. Trump himself became more engaged in entertainment, hinting at plans to launch a massive media company capable of competing with Hollywood's biggest networks. Hollywood had spent years trying to erase Trump from the entertainment industry, but instead, they had fueled the rise of an entirely new cultural movement, one that no longer needed their approval. This was no longer just a battle between Trump and Hollywood. It was a battle for the future of entertainment itself. Despite Hollywood's relentless efforts to erase Trump's influence from the entertainment industry, the resistance against mainstream media control was gaining unstoppable momentum. What started as a battle between Hollywood and Trump had escalated into a full-fledged cultural rebellion, with millions of Americans turning away from traditional media in favor of alternative platforms and independent voices. The rise of anti-Hollywood entertainment. As Hollywood doubled down on censorship, political messaging, and blacklisting, an entirely new entertainment ecosystem began to emerge, fueled by audiences fed up with propaganda and ideological gatekeeping. Independent studios and filmmakers started producing movies that Hollywood refused to touch. films with conservative values, anti-establishment themes, and messages that resonated with audiences tired of political correctness. Some of these films, despite receiving zero mainstream promotion, began outperforming Hollywood blockbusters in certain markets. Comedians and entertainers who had been blacklisted by Hollywood found new life on alternative streaming services, launching comedy specials, talk shows, and satire that mainstream networks refused to air. These comedians, once silenced for refusing to conform, now had millions of dedicated followers online. Former Hollywood insiders began speaking out, revealing shocking details about the entertainment industry's coordinated effort to blacklist and silence Trump supporters. Some revealed how studios pressured actors to take anti-Trump stances, while others exposed hidden corporate ties between Hollywood, political donors, and media elites. Hollywood had tried to control public perception, but instead, it exposed its own hypocrisy and lost the trust of millions of Americans. The power shift, a media empire in the making. Sensing the cultural shift, Trump and his allies began taking more aggressive steps toward launching a full-scale media empire that could directly compete with Hollywood. Rumors of Trump-backed film studios and TV networks began circulating, with insiders suggesting that Trump was planning to fund an alternative entertainment industry that would challenge the politically driven narratives of mainstream Hollywood. High-profile actors, producers, and investors, some still working in Hollywood, began secretly reaching out to Trump's network, fearing that Hollywood's radical turn was unsustainable. These insiders knew that the industry was losing credibility and saw an opportunity to be part of a new wave of entertainment. Major conservative figures and business tycoons began discussing the creation of award shows, festivals, and streaming platforms that would rival the Oscars, Sundance, and Netflix, ensuring that Hollywood no longer had the monopoly on entertainment recognition. For the first time in modern history, Hollywood's cultural dominance was being seriously challenged. Desperation in Hollywood, the backlash begins. Realizing that its control over the entertainment industry was slipping, Hollywood and its media allies launched a desperate counterattack to discredit Trump's growing influence in entertainment. Major publications began publishing hit pieces on independent filmmakers, comedians, and influencers associated with Trump, labeling them as dangerous extremists and attempting to link them to conspiracy theories. Big tech companies intensified censorship, banning accounts, demonetizing channels, and removing content that challenged Hollywood's narratives. Pro-Trump entertainment figures found themselves shadow banned, deplatformed, and blacklisted from all mainstream promotional outlets. Left-wing Hollywood activists organized awareness campaigns to pressure advertisers and sponsors into boycotting any entertainment platform associated with Trump or conservative values. Despite these efforts, audiences continued to abandon Hollywood at an alarming rate. The more Hollywood tried to suppress alternative entertainment, the more people realized how desperate they had become. The cultural turning point. What began as a personal war between Trump and Hollywood had evolved into something much bigger. This was no longer just about politics. It was about who controlled the narratives in American culture. Hollywood had spent decades dictating what people watched, believed, and talked about, but now, for the first time, the audience was fighting back. Millions of Americans rejected mainstream media and sought out independent voices who weren't controlled by studio executives or political donors. Hollywood award shows saw record-low ratings, as audiences realized these events were nothing more than political grandstanding disguised as entertainment. Independent films, comedy specials, and streaming services surged in popularity, proving that people were hungry for content that wasn't dictated by Hollywood's agenda. This wasn't just a temporary cultural shift. This was a revolution in entertainment. Hollywood had declared war on Trump, believing it could erase him from pop culture forever. Instead, it created an entirely new entertainment movement that no longer needed Hollywood at all. Trump didn't just survive Hollywood's attacks. He may have changed entertainment forever. The war between Donald Trump and Hollywood was no longer just a political battle. It had triggered a fundamental shift in the entertainment industry. The cracks in Hollywood's dominance had widened beyond repair, and Trump's influence, rather than being erased, had become stronger than ever. This was no longer a one-sided war. Hollywood was bleeding power, losing its audience, and facing an existential crisis. Despite its desperate attempts to maintain control, Hollywood could no longer ignore reality. Audiences were walking away in record numbers. Box office numbers plummeted, with politically driven films losing money as viewers rejected Hollywood's forced messaging. Even massive blockbuster franchises suffered, as their reliance on progressive narratives drove away their core audiences. Award shows became irrelevant, drawing the lowest ratings in history. The Oscars, once a cultural juggernaut, was now mocked rather than celebrated, with millions refusing to tune in to yet another night of Hollywood lecturing the public. Streaming services saw mass cancellations as alternative platforms rose to challenge their dominance. Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO faced financial setbacks as viewers unsubscribed in protest of woke programming and censorship of conservative voices. For the first time, Hollywood's monopoly on entertainment was truly collapsing. As Hollywood weakened, Trump and his allies seized the moment. The conservative entertainment revolution, once viewed as a fringe movement, was now a full-scale industry, backed by billionaires, independent creators, and millions of dedicated fans. Conservative studios began producing high-budget films and TV shows, drawing A-list talent who had quietly grown tired of Hollywood's radical control. Alternative awards shows and film festivals exploded in popularity, giving recognition to entertainers blacklisted by Hollywood. Events like the Freedom Awards and American Culture Festival became new platforms to celebrate unfiltered creativity without political restrictions. Trump-backed media networks expanded, with Truth Social, Rumble, and independent news organizations gaining more credibility and influence than ever before. The entertainment industry was no longer a one-party system controlled by Hollywood elites. Now, there was competition, and audiences were making their voices heard. Realizing that their grip on entertainment was slipping, Hollywood attempted one final counterattack. Legacy media launched full-scale smear campaigns against Trump-backed entertainment ventures, labeling them as propaganda and trying to delegitimize their success. Major studios, desperate to win back their audience, began faking diversity of thought, pretending to welcome conservative voices, only for those same voices to mysteriously disappear behind closed doors. Big tech escalated censorship efforts, restricting visibility for alternative films and media while artificially boosting Hollywood's failing projects. But it was too late. Hollywood had spent years alienating half of America, and now those people had found something better. Trump's fight against Hollywood had rewired the entertainment industry forever. It was no longer about Hollywood deciding what people should watch, believe, or celebrate. Audiences now had the power. The monopoly on pop culture had been shattered. New voices, once silenced, had built their own platforms. Hollywood was no longer untouchable. The battle that began as a war between Trump and Hollywood had transformed into a cultural awakening. Trump hadn't just survived Hollywood's attacks. He had changed entertainment forever, and the fight for control over culture had only just begun. Hollywood had spent years trying to silence Trump and his supporters, but the entertainment industry was now facing a problem it never expected: losing control over the very culture it once dominated. For decades, Hollywood had dictated narratives, controlled the careers of actors and filmmakers, and shaped public opinion for films, television, and media. But as Trump's influence continued to grow outside of their system, Hollywood found itself in a desperate situation, scrambling to regain power in an industry that was slipping from its grasp. Audiences were no longer tuning in. The once powerful Hollywood establishment saw its influence decline as more people rejected their content in favor of independent films, streaming platforms, and conservative entertainment ventures. It wasn't just political films that were failing. Major studios were losing money across the board, with blockbuster movies underperforming and longtime franchises collapsing due to their over-reliance on progressive messaging. Hollywood had built itself on the belief that it could dictate what the public should think, but now, people were thinking for themselves. As Hollywood struggled, Trump's growing media empire began offering an alternative that mainstream audiences have been craving. His allies expanded their control over independent studios, ensuring that films, documentaries, and television programs that aligned with traditional American values had a place to thrive. Conservative comedians, actors, and musicians who had been blacklisted from Hollywood found new platforms to reach audiences directly, bypassing the traditional entertainment gatekeepers. Crowdfunded films began outperforming studio-backed projects, proving that Hollywood's influence was no longer absolute. Desperation set in among Hollywood elites, in a last-ditch effort to suppress Trump's influence. Major studios and networks began funding high-profile films and series aimed at discrediting him and his supporters. These productions painted Trump as a villain, rewriting key moments of history to fit their narrative. But these tactics only further alienated audiences who saw through the propaganda and turned to alternative sources for entertainment and news. Instead of convincing people to return to Hollywood's version of reality, they only fueled the rise of Trump's counterculture. Media corporations doubled down on censorship, working with social media giants to suppress pro-Trump content while artificially boosting Hollywood's failing projects. Conservative filmmakers and commentators found their content shadow banned or outright removed, while algorithms ensured that Hollywood's messaging remained front and center. But despite their efforts, the shift in power had already begun. No amount of censorship could stop people from seeking out alternative platforms, and no Hollywood film could undo the cultural movement that Trump had sparked. With Hollywood's influence in decline, Trump's allies began discussing long-term strategies to solidify their presence in entertainment. Plans were put in motion to launch a conservative film festival, rivaling the likes of Sundance and Cannes, where independent creators could showcase their work without fear of being blacklisted. New distribution networks emerged, making it easier for right-leaning content creators to bypass Hollywood's control and reach mainstream audiences. Conservative media was no longer just a reaction to Hollywood. It was becoming a true competitor. The final blow to Hollywood's dominance came as more celebrities, directors, and producers began speaking out against the industry's political agenda. High-profile actors who had once kept quiet about their conservative views started breaking their silence, revealing the behind-the-scenes pressure they had faced to conform. Some admitted that they had lost roles or had their careers sabotaged simply for expressing the wrong opinions. Their stories resonated with the public, exposing the hypocrisy and corruption that had defined Hollywood for decades. As Hollywood's empire crumbled, the entertainment industry entered a new era, one where people had choices beyond what the studios dictated, and where Trump's influence had reshaped the cultural landscape forever. The battle for control over pop culture was far from over, but one thing was certain. Hollywood was no longer the only game in town. The war they had started with Trump had backfired, and now they were the ones struggling to remain relevant.